Hello everyone, good evening. Today we are here for our week 10 discussion, which is systemic thinking and the 14 habits of system thinkers. Before we begin, I would like to introduce and understand why we are having this discussion. System thinking is basically about looking beyond an individual problem or event and trying to understand the whole system behind it, how different factors are connecting, how our decision create consequences, and how things change over time, and how we can improve the way we approach problem. We have studied 14 different habits of system thinkers, but the purpose of today's activity is not simply to explain these 14 habits. Each of us has selected one of the habits we personally want to develop and apply in our context. That context could be academic, professional, work, campus activity, or another practical solution. So during this discussion, each member will have up to 3 minutes to explain their selected habits, why they think that it is useful, and most importantly, how they actually plan to practice it. After each presentation, we will also discuss it in a group. We can ask question, give different perspective, challenge the person's assumption, or discuss whether the same habit could work differently in another situation. I think the discussion is important because the systemic thinking is not really about memorizing definition. It is about changing how we think our problem and discussion. For example, instead of meaning how do I solve this problem, we can just ask why this problem is happening in the first place. So while listening to everyone presentation, I would encourage us not only to evaluate whether a habit sounds good, but also think about how practical it is and how it could actually change our behavior. With that, let's begin with our first presenter, which is Rohit.
So good evening, everyone. The habit I've selected is recognizing feedback loops. So the basic idea is that when there's a problem, when it keeps coming back, it's usually not one straight cause and effect line. It's actually a loop. The effect actually becomes the next cause and it just keeps going round and round. The lecture's example was super simple. You feel hungry, you eat food, eating resolves the hunger, and then you just feel hungry once later. And that's the whole point. You're not looking for who caused it, you're looking for the cycle. Next slide. So here's where I saw this in my day-to-day life. So in my data science group project, we are actually building a shared ML pipeline, EDA, feature engineering, training, evaluation, and everything. And every week, it's the same thing. Nobody is clearly owning feature engineering. So it either gets done twice or none at all. And that causes frustration among everybody. And then some people, they just stop checking in as much, which makes ownership even more unclear next time. And the thing is, it's not one person dropping the ball. The loop is actually recreating itself. So once we actually saw it as a loop, three things changed. We stopped blaming individual people and started seeing the shared pattern. We found one breakpoint instead of trying to fix everything at once. And honestly, it just stops the loop from quietly forming again and again after a quick patch. Next slide. So yeah, this is the actual feedback loop mapped out. Uh, Unclear ownership, it leads to duplicated work or missed work. And that causes frustration. That reduces communication. And it just loops back right to unclear ownership again. The breakpoint I picked is right here, unclear ownership, because it's the easiest one to fix directly. It doesn't depend on anybody's mood or how busy they are that week. So we just added a shared visible task tracker, and that weakens the first link. So the rest of the loop has ways to feed on. Next slide. So going forward, we map the loop instead of the incident, find the easiest node to actually touch, fix that one thing, and then just watch if the loop weakens. The real challenge here is that it's tempting to just blame a person instead of seeing the loop. So we're trying to redirect that to shift the thinking from who caused this to what's the loop here. So the bottom line here is that a problem keeps coming back usually is that it's not a bunch of separate incidents. It's just one loop feeding itself. Yeah. So that's me. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Rohit. The next person.
Hi. So the habit I picked is accumulations and rates of change. Basically, a system thinker doesn't just notice that something's piling up, and they actually ask what's building up, and more importantly, how fast. And the lectures makes a cool point here that it's not enough to just notice it, but you have got to actually see it, feel it, count it, and measure it, and then figure out how it's affecting everything else around it. There's this really relatable example from the lecture too. In inventory management, both stocks that moving too fast, the stocks that's just sitting there, dead, are both bad signs. Not because of how much there is, but because of how it's changing. And that's literally why just-in-time systems exist. So things don't quietly pile up without anyone noticing. So moving on to the next slide. Practically, what do you even track? I broke it into four things. First, the stock, like what's actually accumulating, an actual number, not just a week. I feel behind kind of thing. Second, the rate. Is this growing by 1 week or 4 week or a month? Because that completely changes how urgent it is. Third, the ripple. Is this thing affecting other stuffs around it or just sitting there alone? And the last is threshold. Basically, at what point does this stops being something I can realistically catch up on? So in the next slide, you see the actual where I see like here's where actually this shows up for me. Across control engineering, DSP, digital electronics, and embedded systems, all of it, small doubts just build up quietly week after week, and no single week ever feels alarming, Every time it's like, okay, this is a small doubt. Like nothing even screams you're failing behind. But by the time it's actually visible, the backlog's already too big, everything is piled up before exams, and honestly, it's already slowing down other subjects too. Because a lot of them lean on the same core concepts. So the real winning sign was never realizing or really the size of the backlog. It was always the rate it was growing at. In the next slide, here's what I would actually do to get out of this by applying the habit I'm presenting here. The backlogs get caught while they are still small. Instead of me discovering them in exam week panicking, I get much clearer sense of which course actually needs my attention first. Like one growing the fastest, not just one that looks the scariest right now. I start I started noticing which subjects are quietly dragging each other down instead of just judging each one on its own. The next slide shows the diagram. This slide is kind of hard of it. One of the left, if you are not monitoring anything, the backlog looks totally fine week after week, right up until one signal check, right before exams, where you suddenly realize you already passed the threshold. On the right, though, if you're checking in say at week 3, 6, 12, at same that same backlog gets cleared before it ever gets cleared, like before it ever enters the point where it's unmanageable. So the only thing that's different is when you actually look. The next slide shows us the action, challenges, and takeaways. So what am I actually going to do about this? Pretty simple. Honestly, keep running list. One line per doubt, per course, set myself a limit. So once I hit a certain number of unresolved things, that's my cue to stop and catch up. Check in, it's weekly, not just week before exams. Pay attention to the rate, not just to the total questions, and check whether a backlog in one course is quietly messing up with the another one too. The tricky part though is that this backlog just doesn't feel urgent day to day, so I'm trying to force myself to look at actual numbers instead of trusting the vague feelings of I'm probably fine. And honestly, that's kind of whole takeaway. Problems almost never show up in big dramatic they build up quietly until suddenly one falls away. And along the way, um, they are quietly pulling on everything else connected to them too. So really, watching the rate instead of just waiting for the crisis to hit is what keeps everything inside safe and bound. That's all. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I would like to ask you. Imagine a situation where you have somehow a threshold value is reached for a specific subject. How would you handle it afterward? So the system remain connected afterward.
Okay, honestly, if I'm actually hit the threshold in one subject, say DSP backlog, gets too big to clear before exams, the deck's own ripple node kind of already warned this is coming because DSP shares fundamental concepts with control engineering and embedded systems. So the real risk isn't just that one subject stacks; it's that the weak foundation starts dragging the connected subjects down too. So what I would actually do afterward is treat it less like catch up on DSP in isolation and more like the ripple first. Quickly check which of the connected subjects are actually leaning on the same shaky concepts and prioritize just those overlapping topics, not the entire DSP backlog. Like if control engineering needs the same signal processing basics, fixing that overlap gives me two subjects worth for relief for one subject's worth of efforts. So then for actual overflow, stuff that genuinely too much to clear for exams, I would stop treating it as a clear everything and instead accept a partial pass, cover just enough to not fail and not destabilize the connected subjects and push the rest to after exam instead of letting the panic spread sideways into subjects that were actually fine. So basically, don't let one subject crossing threshold turn into a damage control mode everywhere. Isolate the shared routes first, patch those, and let the rest wait instead of trying to save all four subjects equally under the time pressure.
Thank you. Thank you
So,
for your answer.
yeah, my question is when assessing a system,
Yeah, please ask your question, Harshit.
yeah. So, when assessing a system, is it important to look beyond the present situation and understand how it is changing over time? Why is the rate of change more important than current traffic?
Okay, good question. Honestly, for me, this one isn't really this deck only kind of thing, you know. Like the whole point is that stock and rate don't care what subject is. It's the same pattern, whether it's DSP doubts this semester or the project backlog moves there or even like task or piling up at the job. So I think going forward, whenever I catch myself thinking, this is a lot about something, instead of just reacting to how big it feels that day, I want that to be my cue to actually go, okay, wait, how fast is this actually growing? Not just how big is it right now. Like even outside courses, emails, unread messages, whatever, I would rather check the rate early than realize in exam week that it's already past some threshold. And honestly, even personally, like stress and procrastinations or whatever, I feel like those build the same way, right? It's never one big movement. It's just small stuffs quietly stacking up until it's suddenly too much. So yeah, I think this is less about this one tech or and more just a way I want to actually catch things earlier instead of only noticing them once they're already a problem.
Okay, so I'll start with a very relatable example to all of you. Have you ever sat down at your desk with the intention to work hard and you realize that suddenly you have lost 40 minutes scrolling your phone? In this case, most of us will like blame our lack of willpower. We tell ourselves that we need to try harder next time. But today, I want to completely change how you approach problem solving and decision making. In systems thinking, there is a fundamental rule. A recurring behavior is simply a signal of the underlying structure that produces it. It is not a personal feeling or a one-off lapse. There is a powerful idea that perfectly summarizes this actually this. We don't rise to our goals. We fall to our systems. If your phone is within your reach and notifications are on, your environment is perfectly structured to distract you, regardless of your intentions of working hard actually. Yeah, next slide. So, to change the behavior for good, We have to stop relying on our daily motivation and instead change the structure that keeps generating the distraction. You can do this by redesigning the three specific things in your environment. First, change the physical placement. Keep your phone in maybe another room or somewhere else where you can't access it. Second, adjust your default settings. Set app timers and notification limits. So once you don't have to fight the temptation of actually checking your phone every second or so. Third, create a dedicated study space. Use one specific desk only for focused work. So the physical space is in a way associated with the focused work in your mind. Word. Yep. Now, again, this all is good in theory, but when you try to implement it, you will face some challenges. Let's say some things are out of your control. You live in a shared hostel room, or maybe a noisy room. So what to do then? The secret is to separate what you can change from what you actually can't, and focus strictly on controllable things. Like maybe you can change your own desk, you can change your device specific settings instead of whining about maybe I live in a shared hostel and I can't change my company, can't change my roommates. Also, again, one more thing. To avoid change fatigue, don't change everything at once. Change one variable at a time, try to play with it, and settle on a optimum place. And then again change something which could improve your workflow. And do this iteratively to get to a good place. But yeah, so the ultimate takeaway here is, let's say if there is a thing that you are repeating again and again, a simple mistake, it is in a way inherently indicating that the problem is with your structure, not your willpower or your self-control. But so the ultimate takeaway here is it's your environment, not your willpower. I know willpower might be an issue, but usually it's not when things are repeating again and again. Usually it's the underlying system. But so what you will have to do is redesign your structure and the better behavior will naturally follow. Thank you. If somebody has any questions, yeah, I'm open to questions.
Um, Hi, Anshuman. So, I would like to ask you a question. You mentioned share hostel spaces and Wi-Fi as external challenges. How do you adapt your physical study setup when you don't have a dedicated quiet room?
Okay, maybe you don't have dedicated quiet rooms, but you might have access to dedicated quiet hours. Maybe in the late night when everybody is sleeping, you can maybe study. Maybe you have some dedicated space, such as libraries for studying. So you essentially have to explore your options instead of like saying that you can't change certain things and so you will not try at the first place. Try to find some alternatives.
Okay. If somebody wants to ask question.
So you frame this, hi Anshuman. So you frame this as a never a personal failing, only a structure problem, but your own challenges slide admit some structures aren't fully controllable, and and you separately warn against confusing structures with just written rules. So doesn't intention still matter somewhere? Like the moment somebody deliberately walks in back into the other room to get the phone anyway.
Yep, intentions actually do matter. Everything you do is in a way intentional that is optimized for you to improve your productivity. You intentionally choose to walk away to a library or choose to study during late night sessions. So, yeah, intentions do matter, but the clear distinction is that if you are failing repeatedly, then it might be an issue with your actual workflow structure instead of you being less put on the willpower part. So, everything is intentional, but yeah, do check your structure if things are repeating.
So I will present my. So my topic is from knowing to doing. Using feedback to improve what I learn. The systemic thinking habit is the check result and change action if needed. So, what principle? What is the principle I have taken it from? So, it's a habit 12, check result and change action if needed. I mean, whenever we are understanding or learning new things, the understanding is not enough. I must act, see what happens, and adjust my next action based on the real feedback. So this, we get feedback and then we improve our system, not just a theory. So doing theory is not equal to knowing a concept. That doesn't mean I can apply it. So feedback, whenever you get a feedback, result shows what worked and what failed. So action must be changed in case whenever you get in feedback from somewhere, you must change your action according to the feedback. So learning is closed loop, not the straight line. I learn faster by loop through first I check, learn, change, and retry. Like I will use this in my current deep learning project, and understanding back propagation theory, or let's say code in the deep learning. So yeah, where will I apply it? The same, the deep learning concepts in the current project. So my old way was the theory, and the exam. So then I got the feedback, then I improved my. So it's a long way. What will be I doing in the new way? Learning concept, try to implement it, visualize it, explain it, solve the question and mock, check the result, find the weak point, and change the approach, and practice again. So this could be a loop in which everyone could use this. So we could have a good learning. What I expect and how will I practice it? So a real skill, what I expect is the real skill, not just a recall, not just to remember things. If I can code and I can explain, I truly know it. And how will I measure it? The result are the feedback, mistakes, or what mistakes you have done regularly while doing coding or doing some conceptual work. So I will know that where my approach should be changed. From knowing to doing, faster with the each loop. So first is the understanding. First you start with understanding, then you apply it, then you test it, and then you adapt changes. Whatever changes you need from the feedback, you apply this. So the last slide is challenges and responses. What can I face during the process? So fall back into the passive learning. I could somehow break the loop and fall back into the passive learning. Reading feels, because the reading feels easier than solving a problem. And can I visualize or implement? I should ask this question in between. If not, that's a feedback. If I cannot visualize after understanding, that is also a self feedback. So change approach. We should change approach. Don't just reread or restudy the subject. Ignoring actual result and repeating the same method, even when a mock score stays low. So when are you ignoring your methods, you ignoring feedback? That could be a challenge. How do I know that I actually understand this? I have applied. I have told this that we will go by the loop, and then I will know that can I visualize it? Have I understood it? So study, apply, test, reflect, adapt, and repeat. This is the loop we have to stuck in. So this was from my side. If somebody has questions regarding my presentation, they can ask.
Yeah, so you mentioned that feedback is data and that you should change your approach when the results are not as expected. How do you know when feedback mean should you should change your approach?
Yeah, as I said, that when result doesn't match my goal, when result is not matching what I am expecting, then I understood that that the theory, I have understood the theory, but I have failed in, let's say, in a coding, or let's say in a conceptual question or the mock question. That tells me that problem is a learning approach. So I need to change my approach from the feedback. Feedback is the result what I got after applying. So I need to change rather than studying more.
Yeah. So I have a query over here. Your entire loop is, self-check. So where does external feedback come here? Because self-assessment obviously has, blind spots, especially when motivation is low and You're just tempted to tell yourself that you understand it.
Yes, thank you for the question. So, yes, so it's self-assessment is not enough. You are right for the that question. The external feedback would be the end-term result, what you get after the syllabus. The code review from it could be code review from your professor, or it could be a friend who review your concept or a code. This will help to reduce overconfidence if you expect that you have done with the study material, you have got everything. So this will reduce your concept. So yeah, when there is a feedback differ from the assignments or the result what you get. Uh, this is the time to revisit your understanding.
Okay. Hi all, I am Srishti and I'm going to talk about resisting premature conclusions by surfacing and testing assumption. Can you zoom out?
Yeah.
No. So basically, today, or I'll say in our professional life, we often see a situation form an opinion and react immediately. But our first interpretation may not always be completely true. So this habit basically means pausing before deciding, identifying our own assumptions and questioning them, and then considering other possibilities. The first step is that we start with first impression, then pause, where we create a gap before reacting, coming up with the next step, which is we question by asking, what if this is entirely wrong? And finally, we consider whether different viewpoints and evidence are possible or not. Can you move to the next slide? Yeah, thanks. So this above concept becomes clearer through the iceberg principle. So just like an iceberg, we see only a small part on the surface while much more remains hidden underneath. Similarly, in professional situations, what we observe may not explain what is actually happening. So a first impression is information, but not necessarily the full truth. We can ask, what am I assuming? What information am I missing? What else could be true? And what evidence supports my conclusion? This helps us move from observe to assume and understand. Next slide.
It's not working. Yeah.
Yeah. So, this habit can be applied in basically four important professional areas. First is the teamwork. So, in teamwork, we understand what our teammates are and what kind of opinions they have before judging. Because since we all know that different teammates have different background, different opinions about things. So, before coming up to a conclusion, we must know about them, understand what they feel. Second is the feedback. With feedback, we separate useful input from emotion. Then comes our career, which wherein we avoid assuming all that rejection completely explains a decision. And in communication, we clarify what someone truly means instead of interpreting it ourselves. So we replace quick assumptions with intentional curiosity. Yeah, next slide. Okay. So let's consider a situation and find out about this. Let's consider a situation where a teammate becomes quiet and contributes less than expected. The first assumption, or I'll say our immediate assumption, is that they are not interested or committed. But instead of judging them, we can ask, are they unclear about their role? Or maybe it can be possible that they are struggling with their task. Can be that they are uncomfortable speaking or they have misunderstood the expectations. Now, this important point is that the behavior we observe is not necessarily the reason behind it. Can you move to the next slide? So this can lead us to two very different outcomes. Without the habit, we assume the teammate is not committed, pull back or judge them and eventually create less trust and support, which can be seen in the first diagram. While which after applying or with this habit, we pause, hold our judgment, ask what is happening and respond with context, which can be seen in the second diagram. So this basically creates a better support and trust, leading to better decision making, stronger communication, better teamwork, and professional maturity. Next slide. To make this a practice, we should follow four principles, which are pause, question, verify, and decide. The pause principle asks fact or interpretation. The question principle basically means what am I assuming and what else could be true? Because we must expect more and more opinions about any problem. The third is verifying the principle, which means checking the fact, seeking clarity or another perspective. And the fourth is the decide principle, stating responding or basically meaning whatever things that can be responded after understanding the context. Next slide. Now, there are two basic challenges. First is time pressure. We may feel we cannot pause or we cannot wait. So we ask, is it truly urgent? And the second is confirmation bias. Now, once we believe something, we look for evidence supporting it, and hence we ask, what evidence will prove me wrong? My final commitments from this whole presentation and this topic are to question assumptions, consider other perspectives, and seek evidences first. Ultimately, professional growth is not about concluding fastest, it is about understanding deeply enough to understand wisely and to decide. As the quote says, the wisest decisions are not made by those who conclude fastest, but those who question the deepest. Thank you. I'm happy to take any questions.
Hi Srishti. So I have a question. So your quiet teammate example list four kind of alternative explanations before you respond, but the unclear about their role calls for a completely different response than uncomfortable speaking up. How do you actually land on which explanation is right before you act instead of just swapping one assumption for a nicer sounding one?
Okay, thank you, Ravi. So I wouldn't try to decide the explanation purely from observation because that would still be an assumption. I would use a quick check. First, I look at the context and their behavior, then I'll ask a neutral question or speak to them privately. For example, I noticed you haven't had much chance to contribute, or how are you finding the role? Their responses give me evidence about whether it's a lack of clarity, discomfort speaking up, or something else. Then I can tailor my response. And so the key is not to replace a negative assumption with positive one, but to test the assumption before acting on it.
Hi, Srishti. I would like to have a question. Your countermeasure for time pressure is pause and check. Is it truly urgent? But the pause itself takes time, may not have. In genuinely fast moving situations like a live team decision or an urgent work request, how do you actually apply this pause, question, verify process without just becoming a person who's always too slow to decide?
Okay, thank you, Priya. So I don't think the process should be applied with the same depth in every decision. Under genuine time pressure, I would use a rapid version of it, like identify the key assumption first, followed by asking whether it could significantly change the outcome, and then verify only that critical point. If it cannot be verified in time, I'll make the best decision with the information available and remain ready to adjust so that remain ready to adjust as it is new evidence comes in. So the principle is not to delay decisions here, but to rather avoid making an important decision based on an untested assumption. Thank you.
Yeah, hello everyone. I'm Vikas. So I'm going to present the. I want to like basically develop a habit. So I become more aware about my mental model. Yeah. One second. Yeah. Before I make decisions. So basically, I want to understand how assumptions and beliefs that influence how I interpret a situation and how I respond or take decisions. Next slide. I started thinking about mental model like a lens. We don't always respond directly to the reality. We respond to how we understand reality. So, for example, if I believe that more effort always means better results, then when I struggle with the coding, I may assume I just haven't worked hard enough. So my response become working longer. But someone with a different mental model might look at this problem and think maybe I need different strategy. Like next, yeah. I want to apply this particularly during my interview preparation, like difficult coding problems I face. Don't automatically think I need to solve more problems. System design, I don't automatically think I need to learn more framework or interview questions. like doesn't go well automatically think I need a perfect answer. So instead of I want to pause and think and ask a better question to my assumptions, is my current approach actually improving the skill I need? Like more problem equal bad result. But instead of this, we can ask a set like growth questions like is real skill growing? Is real judgment growing? Is reasoning clear? These all those things I will ask. Next slide. The bigger realization for me is that a mental model doesn't just affect a one decision, it can create repeated patterns. If my old model more problems means more days, but I keep making the same mistake, that's evidence that my mental model may be incomplete. So I just want to change the process from simply solving problem to solve analyze and extract the lesson and reuse it. The idea is that changing the model changes the behavior and and eventually the result and the realities. Next slide. Yeah, what could stop me? Of course, developing this habit wouldn't be automatic. First, understand pressure. I may fall back into automatic thinking. So I'll ask question what assumptions is driving my responses. Second, confirmation bias. I may only notice evidence that support that I already believe. So I'll ask what evidence would prove my current model wrong. And finally, I need to be comfortable revising my assumptions instead of saying it as a admitting that I was wrong. So final takeaway is simple. Before automatically changing my behavior, I want to question my model behind it. What model, what mental model am I using today that may be shaping my tomorrow? And I'm open for the questions.
Yeah, thank you, Vikas. The if somebody has questions, they can ask.
Yeah, Vikas, I have a question. So, what is our mental model we are adopting during our studies or our work culture? Whether they or the same mental model will also work for our real life also.
Yeah, I think mental model and framework are useful beyond formal studies and interviews, but I don't think they are universal rules. Their values in is helping us question how we are thinking and adapt when situations changes. So it doesn't depend on the just for the interviews. It's also depend on life because we started questioning and taking like and thinking like we ask questions to the assumptions so we can adapt and think the situation so we can apply in the real life as well.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, I have another question. Like you told that you have to build a mental model, which is in a way saved from feedbacks that you receive. All right. So let's say you are in a situation where the feedback is not available immediately. Let's say you are in an interview. You try to give perfect answers, but you told that you don't actually need to give perfect answers. You need to show your reasoning skills. But the feedback there might not be immediately available to you. It will be available once the interview gets over. So how do you adapt your mental model accordingly in these kind of situations?
Yeah, like in interviews, I may not get immediate feedback about whether my reasoning is good. So I wouldn't try to completely change my mental model in the middle of every question. Instead, I use mentality like and some like intentional pauses so I can get time to ask questions and some internal signals like when we give interviews we mostly like ask questions that am I stuck, am I repeating the same approach, am I unsupported assumptions, those are the evidence too. So even without knowing the final outcome I can revise my approach based on what is happening in the moment. Then after the interview, I can use those actual outcomes and feedbacks as a stronger evidence to revise a mental model for the future.
Once it's struck in. Yeah.
So, hi everyone. Today I will be presenting on developing system thinking habit with a focus on adaptive decisions and the feedback loop. The core idea behind this habit is simple. A good plan is not one that never changes, but one that improves with new information appears. Next slide, please. The habit I am focusing on is taking results and changing actions when necessary. The key shift is from blindly following an initial plan to evidence based adaptation. Instead of assuming that our first approach is perfect, we continuously observe results, identify what is working and what is failing, and adapt when evidence contradicts our expectations. Next. Traditionally, we may think of a process as plan, follow, and finish. System thinking changes this approach to a continuous cycle. Plan, act, change, plan, act, check, learn, and adapt. The objective is therefore not to remain committed to a plan simply because it was decided initially. The objective is to prioritize results or assumption and use what we learn to improve the next action. Next. Where will I apply? I would apply this principle particularly to a semester group project, let's say, especially during a critical development and testing phases. In such situations, we face slower coding processes, integration bugs, or an imbalance in task delegation. Instead of continuing with the original plan, the system thinking approach is to review immediate results, identify bottlenecks, and dynamically adjust our targets. Next, please. What could emerge? This creates a feedback loop. We begin by planning and acting, then observe the results, and then evaluate the feedback. The feedback becomes the input for the next action. This creates a continuous improvement cycle where problems can be identified earlier, reducing the wasted time and process friction. Next. What will I actually do? To make this habit practical, I will follow 6 steps. Set checkpoints, compare expected and actual results, collect feedback, identify the causes of variation and adapt the next action. And finally, recheck whether the change produced improvement. This ensures that adaptation is based on evidence rather than assumptions. Next slide. Challenges and key takeaways. What could go wrong? However, there are certain risks. We may become attached to our original plans and ignore the negative feedback or discover problems way too late. There is a risk of over adaptation where we keep changing direction without meaningful evidence. Therefore, the solution is to use regular checkpoints and treat feedback as data rather than criticism. To include, I would like to say system thinking is not about predicting everything correctly from the beginning. It's about learning from what actually happens and responding intelligently. Next slide. Yeah, so thank you. If anyone has any questions, they can ask.
Okay, hi Aishi. On the over adaptation is actual cost. Your core risk is over adaptation, changing too often without meaningful evidence. So, can you give one real moment this semester where you almost did that and what specifically stopped?
Oh, okay. So one situation was when our progress was slower than expected. My first reaction was to think that we need to change the whole approach. But instead of making a quick decision, I stepped back and looked at the actual reason behind that delay. I found out that the issue was more specific, so I changed that part of the project. For me, that was an important learning because adaptability doesn't mean changing constantly. It means being willing to change when there is enough evidence to support that change.
Hi, I'm Ravi Kumar. So, the habit I've chosen is seeing the bigger picture. I've noticed that when something goes wrong, I focus so much on that one thing that it starts to feel bigger than it actually is. The principle here is to zoom out, understand the large system, and then zoom back in without losing sight of what matters. The lecture gave this example of a student devastated by one bad exam, but when they look at their life from 20s to their 80s, the one exam becomes just a small moment in a much bigger story. So that's the mindset I want to develop. Next slide. So a situation where I want to apply this is during the upcoming placement season, when the interview preparation will happen along coursework and exam. Imagine I get a bad ML midterm during that period. My first reaction might be, maybe I'm just not that good enough for data science. But if I zoom out, it's one exam. I still have statistics, databases, DSA, internships, placements, and plenty of opportunities ahead. So instead of treating one result as a verdict, I can see it as one data point in a much larger journey. Next slide. The outcome I'm looking for is a better perspective. I want to separate a genuine problem from a temporary setback and respond based on the bigger picture rather than my immediate reaction. This also applies to the placement. So one rejection shouldn't become a judgment on my ability. It's simply one outcome in a much larger process. Next slide. And that's what my diagram shows. From the ground, the midterm takes up the entire frame. It feels like a verdict, but from 5,000 feet up, it's just a small point among everything else, like the courses, the capstone, internship placement, and everything still ahead. Same score, but different perspective. Next slide. To make this an actual habit, I'll do three things. Pause before reacting, keeping a visible roadmap, and once a week take 10 minutes to zoom out and review the bigger picture. So one challenge is that I might use zoom out to avoid dealing with the real problems. So I'll use a simple rule: acknowledging the problem, zooming out to understand the impact, and then zooming back in to decide exactly what actions I need to take. So my takeaway is setback only feels like the whole story. So when it's only one thing in view, sometimes you just need to widen the frame. Thank you. Happy to take questions.
Yeah, so I would like to ask you a question, Welcome. So if you zoomed out your view as you have presented in your slide, so if your zoom out view, suppose your zoom out view is not aligned with your reality, say there is a setback, and how should your system be reconstructed after that?
So if there's a real setback, at the first I'll acknowledge it instead of trying to minimize it. Then I'll reassess the bigger picture based on what has actually changed, and then decide what I need to do next. And then zooming out, giving perspective and not a false reassurance.
Thank you. Thank you for your answer.
Hi. So my question is, your challenge slide admits zooming out is additive, not a replacement. The narrow issue still gets fixed. In actual midterm example, what specific actions did fixing the arrow issue looks like beyond just feeling less panicked about?
Yeah, honestly, it's a good catch. So, like my deck shows the a calm zoomed out version really well, but it doesn't actually say exactly what I did about the midterm. It's means what I did about the midterm itself. So let me be real. Zooming out helped me not spiral, but it didn't fix the grade. What actually fixed what actually it fixed was the narrow issue, which was going back to that 40 out of 100 and figuring out which topic I actually messed upon. Like, was it the concept gap or just the bad time management on the exam? And doing the extra practice on specifically those before the next test. So, so I so I guess the honest answer is the bigger picture thing gave me the headspace to sit down and do that calmly instead of panic studying everything, but the actual fix was still boring and a specific go back, finding the weak spot and drilling it. S- so zooming out didn't replace that step. It just stopped me from either freezing up or either overreacting and dropping the course.
Yeah, good evening, guys. Myself, Sirkan, Tenting here. And I have selected out of the 14 habits of system thinking, I have selected finding leverage action. The leverage action I would like to explain something. In any system, we will always find a number of modular things which works behind it. We have to find out uh, a small actions which can make a big change. That what we call the leverage point. The word leverage came from word lever. We have much learned about the lever. Lever is the mechanical device which can change the energy from one point to another. It transfers the energy. The same way in the real life also, in our system thinking also, there are virtual leverage actions. We have to find out these leverage actions. Okay, next slide please. The principle behind this in the real life and systems. In the system, the leverage point is always a small modular thing which can make a big change. We have to just find it out. But the system always keep on changing. After the computerization, all the words are being modularized because this is the need of the computer system. So all the modular things have some structures, and we have to find the leverage points in each structure to get our big results and outputs. And don't just push hard work behind that because maybe the small work give a big result. And that is the main technique to find out the leverage point. And some points in the system are all more sensitive to change. Some points are not sensitive, they are basic points, but they may not make a big change. So we have to find that leverage point so that we make a big result. Because we make a chronology also for the leverage point. Maybe some points are making big results, some points are making small results. So we have to make a chronology of that. First, we have to attack on the points which give the bigger outputs. Next slide, please. And where to apply this? Because everywhere we can apply it, in the real life also, in the work culture also, in physics also. Anywhere we can apply these leverage points. But I would like to apply this leverage point in our study because we are doing this study as a scaling process. The scaling process is the very much required process in today's world because without skills we cannot survive in the workspace. So the problem, I study more and more and more, that will not make effect. We have to study what is required today because the technology is changing fast. So we have to find out our scaling process where we are making mistakes because we need the results. In the earlier times, in 90s, research was more important, but now research is already there, but we have to make it workable in our real life. So in this situation, we have to make such changes which can give bigger outputs. For the bigger outputs, we have to find out the skills which can give the bigger results. For this, suppose we are learning something, we are coding, we are making some models, then we have to find out the mistakes. Where we are making the mistakes. Suppose we are taking 4 subjects. Then in the 4 subjects, suppose we are good in one subject, but we are not good in another subject in coding part because 2 parts are there, one coding part, one part is the theoretical part, mathematical part. Suppose mathematics is good and coding is not good, then we have to more focus on the coding part because coding makes mistakes. We learn from the mistakes. For that process we have to make a error log. Error log is a big thing. Error log is not a word. Error is different and error log is very different. Error is error. We can find it out, we can get the correction for that. But error log is a very good thing which we can log in a list, in a text. So that error log can be analyzed, and that analysis can be daily, that can be weekly. And go to the next slide, please. When we study, we make mistakes, and we make repeated mistakes also. But when we analyze the error log, after making these repeated mistakes, that error logs can be also analyzed by the coding process also. Now computer is efficient to do this analysis of the error log. That error log can be analyzed where we are making the repeated mistakes. That repeated mistakes can be analyzed, and we can review these mistakes, and we can target this review to test it, where if we change this error, then what effect or what effect on the output is there, then targeted output we can check. And if you find there's a leverage point is there in this error log, then we can make it prioritize. Next slide, please. And if we prioritize it, then we will get fewer mistakes, because suppose we find it out, then we can we can remove that mistakes. And if we analysis and the pattern, analysis the pattern of the mistakes and error log, then we can do it daily, we can do it weekly, whatever comfortable we are finding, because the workload will also be there. So we can choose it where to how the patterns are repeating, whether it is daily, whether it is weekly, whether it is monthly, or whether at the exam time only we are doing mistakes. The biggest challenge is that whatever we do practice in our action plan, it may fail also. The bigger challenge is that we should not forget that we have to study more and more and hard work also. Not only find every point, find the leverage point and get the result. That is not the easiest way. The trick cannot give you the success. Always we should be ready, because the challenge is that we should always be ready to face the pressure also. If you need more study, then you have to study more for that point. Next slide, please. So the key takeaway from this presentation is that see the whole structure, find the leverage point, and test the test. And after testing, if we give the better results, then only adapt. If it is not just we are finding out and not giving the result, then don't adapt it. And better result don't always require more efforts. If you find suppose you find the root cause of the problem, then it is very easier to resolve it. And we can find, as picture shows, we can, if apply at a good point, or we apply the force, then we will get the bigger system results. Next slide, please. Yeah, in the studies also, if you analysis and find the patterns of our error, then we can improve our studies also. See the system, what system we are studying. Suppose myself is professional, somebody is standalone. Every system will work customized. I have to finalize my system according to myself. So see the system, what system we are working, and find the leverage point where we can study in the evening, in the night, in the morning, in the office also, in the lunchtime also. Then suppose our system works for me, then it will give the improved result and we can adapt it. Next slide. I will welcome any questions regarding this.
Okay, I do have some questions. Like, let's say you have endpoints then that you can tweak. How do you actually identify which are the good leverage points from points that are maybe normal? Let's say in a error log you told, there are things like warnings, there are things like errors, there are multiple level of logging. So how do we actually distinguish between a critical bug from, let's say, a warning?
Yeah. Thank you. Good question. Actually, error log, I have identified error log, not only error. Error log means it will be a compile of errors. Suppose we are doing, because we have to learn the pattern also. Now the technology gives us opportunity to analyze our error logs also. Suppose error log is there, a lot of error logs we have done during coding also, during the study also. That error logs can be analyzed by the softwares also. We can find out the cosine similarity or like that. We can find out what are the errors we are doing repeated. The first we have to take it out, the repeated errors, what we are doing, which is on the top list. First we remove it. Maybe once we remove that, the other errors automatically will be removed. Am I clear to clarify you?
Yeah, got it.
Thank you.
Hi, sir. So,
Yeah.
my question to you is how do you decide which mistake from your daily error log needs the most attention during the weekly review?
Yeah, I think in the last question also I covered it. Error log means log of error gives a lot of things because you must be thinking, must be seen in the diploma courses also, but we are programming we are did. Error was the basic thing we were getting, and due to that error we were debugging our codes. So when we find the errors, then suppose we are daily analysis we are doing. Every day, suppose we are doing a mistake, that one space is extra at the time of typing. Then, suppose we get I will got 10 mistakes every day, then we will focus on that. And that focus will give our energy to remove that error. Next time, whenever a space we will be attentive, we will not do that error. Am I clear? Like that, we will analysis that.
Okay. So hey guys, my habit is a short-term, long-term, and unintended consequences. Basically, before doing something, look ahead at three things: that what happens right away, and what happens year later, and what you don't like, what you don't yeah, what happens yesterday and what you didn't even plan for. The lectures example like ignoring blood sugar today, fear today feels harmless, but over years it damages your kidneys, that hits your ability to walk, and that hits your income. So one small choice and it just ripples out. So next slide. Okay. So yeah, I broke into three lessons like short term, less safe, tighter schedule this month, long term, stronger portfolio, deeper skill over the year, and unintended could be new mentor connections, or it could be burnout that breaks my other courses. The real question underneath is just, is the short term pain worth the long term gain? So next slide. Next slide, third slide, please.
It's not an excellent.
Is it third?
Yeah,
Okay, so
this
yeah.
one is second, third.
Here's where this shows up for me. A professor's research project or a live Kaggle competition comes up mid-semester, genuinely valuable, but I'm already juggling machine learning, databases, and statistics. Normally, I would just give a quick yes or no based on the how busy this week feels. The habit says map it out first before deciding. So yeah, next slide, please. Okay, so honestly, the goal isn't predict every consequence perfectly. It's just about slowly decision down long enough to see past this week's pressure and make the trade-off on purpose instead of by accident. Next slide, please. Yeah. So here's a diagram that this is the actual diagram on decision three benches. Short term is heavier workload and less sleep. Long term is stronger portfolio. Unintended is new connection or burnout risk. And the real question, can I tolerate the short-term cost for the long-term gain? Like, what else might this touch that I'm not seeing yet? Or all three get mapped before deciding, not after. So yeah, next slide please. So practically, I write three lenses down before committing. Ask the trade-off questions directly and set a checkpoint to see if it played out way I expected, like real change or unintended consequences by definition, or hard to predict. So I'm not chasing completeness, just a wider net than a snap decision. Like bottom line, every choice I has three futures attached to it, and naming them early beats finding out one at a time. So yeah, that's all for me. Thanks for listening.
Yeah, somebody has questions. There are no questions.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah, one question.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, please ask.
Yeah. So, like, how do you think consistently practicing these habits will influence the way you approach problems and make decisions in future?
Mm, so by practicing this, you can like look for your long-term goal and short-term goal in more clear way. Like while deciding on task or committing to any task, you're gonna verify with three lenses. Like, is it gonna helpful in practically for any long-time planning? Like take a big 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 path or big future, like opening a future opening gate for your life, or is it for a short time, like getting a kaggle competition done and you're getting some prize money, like a short term achievement you have implemented in your life. So before committing a task, you have to like categorize that if it's a short term or long term thing, then or unintended on, like you are gonna gain some experience, good or bad on, then decide like you are gonna commit or not based on your timings. So it's help you in time management. Also, the time you are investing, is it helpful in your real life or not?
Okay, thank you.
I have a question.
Yeah.
In the context of learning management system, suppose we are learning, we are in the process of learning, this short-term goal and long-term goal in present context, technology is changing very fast. The what a short-term goal was before 10 years is today within 1 year. Suppose how the short-term goal and long-term goals should be calibrated in the terms of learning so that we can achieve. Because suppose by the time we learn something that becomes outdated, and how this short-term and long-term goals should be calibrated in real life, in the learning process.
Uh, in this context, the outdated part and the short, like how you're gonna map that, which one gonna be last forever and which one gonna be not last forever. That is really dependable based on the industry you're gonna work on. Okay, so like if you're gonna going for the researching part, there they have always like look for the past work, like what is happening and what why it's happening. Like there doesn't welcome future, like future works really without checking anything. Like before they always take a future like back work. Like example, when you are learning any machine learning model, you just start with the linear algorithm, because linear regression model, because that is well tested and also easy to understand. So this is already outdated because nobody uses linear regression right now to implement make some like make any modification like model building purpose, but it is essential to understand the basics. So indeed this is like outdated, but it is essential to understand, build the blocks for your understanding purpose to build up your future long-term path. So if you want to play a longer game, like a long-term path, so you have to detailed you have to like detail focused on your short-term goals, like how what you are learning today. Like if you take a course for SPG, you have to go through all the course weeks and course weeks content to understand every concept. After that, you are gonna get a full SPG course content understand. So SPG course content is a long term goal, but the short term goals are the week content. So you have to focus on short term goal, which is a subset of the long term goal. So first you have to like recognize which is the long term and which is the short term for you and your purpose. Like you have, if you're intending to like achieve something from it or getting want to get something from learning it or working on it, then you can understand this part. And about the outdating part, everything gonna outdated. Like right now we are using this software on classical computer. Maybe some days it gonna be a quantum computer. So that's really like relevant that everything gonna change. Like change is a constant in our life. So we have to accept this and focus, like select our long term and short term based on our own perspective. And the industry thing always gonna change. So, but yeah, there's gonna be a place for you everywhere. So you have to just search for like what is the short, like planning in your future to work on and select that short term and long term goal based on that. It's really a personal level part. Like no
I
one
think,
can guide you on this thing.
sorry
Thank you.
guys.
So nice. So much clarifying answer. Thank you.
Guys,
Thank you.
um,
Okay. So thank you everyone. After listening to all the present participants, I think one thing became very clear, that system thinking can be applied to very different situation, even though the problem we deal may be completely different. Some of us has focused on understanding the bigger picture. Some of us has uh, uh, put ahead the questioning and the assumption. Some of dive into the identifying unattended consequences, like Rohit has recognized the feedback, Priya has told about the rate of change. Likewise, so even though these habits are different, there is a common idea connecting them, that don't look at the problem in isolation, try to understand the system around it. One thing I particularly noticed from today's discussion is that solution that looks effective in short term may not always be best solution in the long term. Similarly, sometimes the problem is not simply an individual behavior. It can be influenced by structure, incentive, process, assumption, or the feedback within the system. So I think the discussion shows that the developing a system thinking habit doesn't necessarily require of making a huge change. It can start with a small questioning we ask ourselves. And most importantly, we can use these habits in our own academic and professional situation, rather than treating them only as a theoretical concept. So, for me, the main takeaway from today's discussion is that the system thinking is less about finding a quick answer and more about improving the way we understand, question, and respond to the situation. So thank you everyone for participating and sharing your valuable perspectives and views on this topic. Thank you for making this discussion rather than just series of presentation. Thank you very much.